may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight.
Keep your babies close to you. There's something out there.
What's up, Mob Crew? I'm Chris, and today's missing person case is Don. Also, today's person of interest is Olivia. Today's missing person case is also today's missing person case is Corey.
What's going on there, ma'am? We were kidnapping. Hurry, please.
What's up, everybody? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you can hear me, please put a 1 in the chat. Make sure everything's working good this time. Last time we had a little bit of audio trouble. And a special thanks to the veterans. Happy Veterans Day. And thank you guys so much for all you guys have done and your sacrifice. That's so awesome. So special thanks to all the veterans. Before we get started with today's show, which of course we're going to talk about Delphi and of course feature the missing, quickly I just want to plug my affiliate, My Patriot Supply. So I'm going to quickly do that and then we'll get going here. A little bit low. Okay, we'll get it up a little higher. There we go. I'll fix it right after the plug. Mob Crew and friends, are you prepared for the widespread food shortages ahead? Farmers have been warning us for months, but are we listening? They say it's beyond their control, especially with the fertilizer crisis. Bottom line, food shortages will be a harsh reality very soon. That's why you should get ready now with emergency food from My Patriot Supply. And good news, today you'll save 20% on their 3-month food kit. These kits provide delicious, easy-to-make breakfasts, lunch, dinner, snacks, drinks for one person for 3 solid months. Get one for each member of your family while you're able to save 20% during this timely sale. Remember, My Patriot Supply is the nation's largest preparedness company with millions of families already protected. These 3-month food kits, which average 2,000 calories a day, are in stock and ready to go. Order ships fast and free and arrives in unmarked boxes. Go to preparewithwww.preparewiththemobcrew.com. Those who know what's coming are already prepared. Are you? Prepare with www.preparewiththemobcrew.com. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. Shout out to My Patriot Supply. If you're interested, there's a link down below. Yes, people are asking how is the food. It's actually pretty good. I've only tasted 3. I've done the oatmeal, the mac and cheese, and it just tastes just like your Kraft macaroni, and I think I did home-style potatoes. And yeah, it was actually pretty good. I'm surprised. So huge shout out to them. So all right. So first, before we get started, we always like to feature the missing in all our shows. So here we've got Miles Staton, missing since October 20th of this year. He's just 21 years old, has hazel eyes, brown hair. He's got 2 tattoos, one on each on his thigh above his knee. He is driving a Honda CR-V, Black 97. It has Utah plates. It does have a specific sticker. This is a skateboarding sticker. It's a toy machine sticker. I used to skateboard, so I do recognize that sticker. But if you guys have any details, he went missing out of Aurora, Oregon. If you have any tips, please call 619-955-2986. And then one more. This just came out. This is Talem Berry, just 4 years old. He was last seen on October 9th. It looks like his father, Raymond Berry, age 39, took him. He has, and this is Raymond over here to the right. So here's him with a beanie and without a hat, and then obviously goatee and without goatee. So it looks like he took his son. It says he may shave his head to hide his identity. It is believed Ray was prepared to live off-grid. They could be anywhere from Colorado to Washington. Ray does suffer from PTSD and is untreated. Do not approach. So if you have any tips, this is in Sydney, Montana, but could be anywhere between Colorado and Washington. Please call 406-433-2210. Would be traveling possibly in a green 1995 Ford F-150 with Montana tags, and license plate is F0016. All right. So before we get started, if you guys want to put where you guys are from in the chat, I haven't done that for a long time. So if you'd like to, please put where you guys are watching from in the chat. I see a lot of new subscribers in here, so shout out to you guys. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my channel. We're gonna play a little bit of the Murder Sheet because I put out a podcast yesterday, and it does talk about Richard Allen's past. They do a couple interviews with some classmates and some people that grew up in that area. I think it's kind of fascinating. Of course, we're only gonna listen to about maybe half of it, but I do have permission. So shout out to them. Oh, so cool. So we got Norway, South Carolina, Florida, everywhere. That's so cool. Norway, that's so cool. We got Steve from True Crime Web. Shout out to him. We may do some special projects down the road, hopefully. He does have his own channel, and he does amazing work as well. So let's get started. We'll start playing the podcast. Like I said, it starts out with the classmates and a couple of interviews, and then they get into what we are all wondering is how did they find Richard Allen? We always kind of suspected, that with the Kegan Kline and the Wabash River search, that's what kind of got the ball rolling, and that's what led to Richard Allen. But in this podcast, it doesn't sound like that's the case, at least not yet anyway. So we'll go ahead and play that, and then I'll play some videos while we're listening to it, and we'll kind of stop and talk about it. But kind of interesting. So let me back it up a little bit.
Spreadsheet gave way to our podcast, The Murder Sheet.
Now we maintain that same historical crimes, and of course...
Let me know if the volume's okay. Oh, let me get caught up in the chat real quick here. If the volume's all right with the Murder Sheet.
Restaurant murders.
Full analysis, thorough research, and in-depth...
Skip it forward just a little bit. I do have a volume booster if it's not loud enough.
So to start with, we'll read you some quotes from 3 former classmates of Rick or Ricky Allen. They attended North Miami High School with him in Miami County, Indiana. We're not going to use their real names to protect their privacy. We'll just call them Gabriella, Edward, and Amanda. You'll often find in crime stories, reporters go to former classmates and people like that to speak about the perpetrator, the accused in this case, about what they were like. And there's a reason for that. It's because they knew the person at a pretty formative time in their life, but they're not as close as family members who might be less inclined to talk. So keep in mind that as we kind of read these quotes, because people change a lot over the years for good and for ill, and who somebody was in high school is not necessarily predestined who they'll become as an adult, but it can give us some clues about their personality and their formative years. So hopefully this can add some biographical information about Rick Allen and the kind of person he is.
Yes, and also another reason why people will often talk with school classmates of someone is it's easy to figure out who they are. All you really have to do is get a hold of a high school yearbook.
So which they do. I just want to quickly... Oh, Utah. Awesome. Yeah, I am from Utah. Imperial Customs. Gosh, that name sounds familiar. That's awesome. Fellow Utah. So shout out to you. And then shout out to Miss Dog Lover. She says, this is a very evil individual. To think he committed such a brutal double murder of young girls at age 44 is insane. He's done it before, in my opinion. Yeah, a lot of people are wondering, is this connected to Evansdale? And I do have an episode where I kind of talk about the weird connections, like the anagram of the dates between Evansdale and Delphi. There's a lot of strange coincidence or connections between the two. They're both kind of bodies were found by a bridge. Both involved two girls around the same age. So yeah, a lot of similarities and not very far from Delphi. So it's possible. All right, we'll keep going here.
Precisely.
And in fact, through these people we spoke with, we were able to get access to some of the yearbooks, including ones that had pictures and information about Rick Allen.
Absolutely. So we actually were able to view all of his high school yearbook photos, starting as a freshman. As you can imagine, with a name like Allen, he tended to be towards the front of these yearbooks. And freshman year, the photo he really looks so different than he does now. He's a kid. But he has like kind of a close cropped buzz cut, looks very young, looks honestly more like a middle schooler than a high schooler. We had these folks that we spoke to said he was one of the smaller boys in the grade in terms of height. Sophomore year, he's wearing a plaid shirt. His hair is even closer cropped. He's smiling. Again, just looks like a kid. It's just a black and white photo that you would expect to see in an old yearbook. From junior year, he has a mullet, so sort of reflecting the styles of the time more
This
so.
would have been, what, the late 80s?
This would have been the late 80s, early 90s, yeah. So, t-shirt, mullet, starting to look a bit older. And then senior year, he has his portrait. It's in color. You can kind of recognize, I think, the eyes a little bit more. He's wearing a button-down shirt, basically has a buzz cut again. And, certainly looks quite different from the mugshot that we all saw once this arrest happened. But we're going to be kind of taking a look at Rick or Ricky and who he was during these years through the eyes of his classmates and people who knew him at the time.
So we talked to a few of his high school classmates, as Anya said. And to protect their privacy, not only are we not using their real names, we're also not going to be using their voices. We had our recordings of our conversations with them transcribed, and so the two of us will be reading the quotes from them.
And you'll hear this sound effect whenever we're reading an excerpt of their quotes in their interviews with us. So here's what Gabriella had to say about not only Rick, but his family, which consisted of his two parents and a younger sister. Very, very just normal, small-town American family. Just normal. His sister and I would sometimes carpool together to school when we were teenagers. And Ricky was a little bit older than us.
Okay, so just for those that are tuning in, we're listening to the Murder Sheet podcast that came out yesterday. It's interviews with some classmates of Rick Allen, and they're just kind of giving the backstory of what it was like to go to school with him. It's not too in-depth, but it's enough to kind of give you an idea of what he was like in school. And there was one question I saw. Asha degree. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. North Carolina, missing on 213. Yeah, that was one of the other dates. It was always between at least the Evansdale, it was the 13th. So that's interesting. I'll have to look at that.
Gabriella didn't remember many activities that Rick was involved in high school, and she noted that his senior page didn't even have a quote, which in retrospect she found a little odd.
In fairness, I was in high school in roughly the same era. My senior page didn't have a quote that I can recall.
Yeah, probably shouldn't read too much into it, but it was something that she mentioned. I had probably too many quotes in my senior high school yearbook. Now, basically, Gabriella's assessment of Rick was that he was just a very quiet guy, not somebody who raised any red flags, not somebody you would be worried about necessarily. Just kind of a quiet, fade into the background kind of person. I'm sure some of us were like that in high school, and maybe some of us knew people like that in high school. It's not necessarily anything to be alarmed about. Some people are just shy or quiet, and that's okay. And that's sort of what we were getting from her. One thing that we've been tracking down with Rick Allen a little bit is, where did he live other than Mexico, his hometown, and Delphi, where he moved and where he was recently arrested. And one place that comes up a lot is actually Peru, Indiana, in Miami County. That's no surprise. Peru and Mexico in Indiana are right next to each other. And Gabriella was able to tell us about some of the intermingling that went on back then between kids from Peru and kids from Mexico, Denver, and other towns that fed into the North Miami High School. Definitely. Peru and North Miami kids intermingled. Friendships, marriages, absolutely. When we'd say, hey, I'm going to town, that meant you were going to Peru, because that was the closest bigger town to Mexico and Denver.
So what's interesting is that he was growing up in Peru, which happens to be the same place Tony Kline was from. So could he have met Tony Kline? Now, obviously, Kegan would have been much younger. I mean, I think there's a 20-year difference between Kegan and his father. So obviously, if there was a connection early on, it would have to be through Tony. Unless he's hanging around like, 5 to 10-year-olds when he's in his 20s, I guess that would be kind of just vague math in my head. So if there is a connection, it would have been started with Tony Kline. But after this, like I said, we'll listen to about half of it, and then we'll talk a little bit about the connection between Kegan and Rick Allen, and if maybe there is no connection. It's kind of weird.
So that's some of the context we got from Gabriella, and I think we'll leave her for now, but we will be coming back later to her about a story that she heard sort of circulating around the Mexico circles about something involving Rick Allen that is a little bit more pertinent to the Delphi case.
And more recent. But right now we're talking about his high school days. So why don't we move on to Edward, or rather, again, the person we're calling Edward. Edward was a few grades above Rick Allen when he went to high school. But he did play baseball and like army games with Rick when he was growing up. Here's what he had to say about those days. I can speak for Rick as a child. We played baseball together. This is a small town of 350 people. We played baseball in the summertime, traded baseball cards, played army with my next door neighbor and Ricky. I would have never guessed when this first came out. When I see that picture of Ricky, I was like, there's no way. I guess this is also kind of a cliche in true crime, is that when a person is arrested or accused of a crime, the people who knew that person are always surprised.
It is a cliche, but frankly, I think it's one that speaks well of people, because if someone's not doing anything outwardly wrong, being incredibly suspicious of people that you feel is not exactly a good look. So I can understand that if you're saying, this was a guy, he was always very nice to me, I never heard about him going after anyone or being creepy with anyone, why would you be suspicious of that person? And I think that's something that, people kind of get upset when they hear that cliche in true crime, but I think it's important to remember, like, what if this was your life?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I can imagine if you did grow up with him and then now you find out, because it is such a small town. Rockaway says that, Molly, I'm waiting to find out if they caught him because of the cat. Cat lady wife owns some rare breed, difficult to groom cat, and the fancy cat hairs were left at the crime scene. It's interesting because I did kind of make a short video for one of my members about that, because there is a picture, and we're going to get to it in a minute, where there is that cat that's laying on his back, and there is, in the search warrant of Ron Logan, that there is possible animal hairs. And that would be interesting if one of the connections, or the nail in the coffin, or whatever you want to call it, is the pet hair. It's quite possible. I was definitely thinking the same thing.
What if we're talking about somebody that you knew pretty well?
Just as a cat lover, I mean, I'm a huge animal lover. Love all animals. I tend to be a cat whisperer, so I have cats, but we do have everything here, and chickens. But cat hair gets everywhere. And so it would not be hard to think, if Richard Allen is BG, that he had cat hair with him and took it to the crime scene.
When you were kids, or when you were growing up, or at some point in your life through your job or social life, is it normal to just assume everyone is secretly has some very dark secrets? I don't think that's good.
It's certainly not normal. It's certainly not healthy.
No.
I think everybody has a tendency to assume that what is evil is different, is foreign to your own experience. And so you don't necessarily see that or expect to see that in the people who populate your day-to-day world.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add, all of the classmates we spoke to, nobody was defensive. Nobody said, absolutely not, couldn't be him. They basically were open-minded and saying, like, this is very different from the person I once knew, but I'm open-minded and I will be willing to hear the evidence for and against once that comes out. And I'm really horrified by the possibility that this person that just seemed like a nice, normal guy could be behind it. So no one was reflexively like defensive or anything like that.
Exactly. And more often people would say things like what Edward said here. One thing I want to say is that I've known Rick's parents all my life, and they're good people. If Rick did or didn't do this, he's a 50-year-old man, and he made his choices.
Yeah.
I still can't believe.
Yeah, a lot of people are attacking his mother, and I don't think that's fair, Because let's say if he just passed away from cancer in his 40s, then technically he would have been just, before the murders, then he would have just been a normal person, I guess, unless he committed others before this that we don't know about. But anyway, long story short, I don't think it's fair to attack the family members, especially the mother, until we learn more, especially the wife and stuff. I just don't think that's fair. It seems like they're suffering from this. If they are, especially if the wife didn't know, she's suffering just as much in her own way as the victims, but in a different way. But anyway, I think we shouldn't throw stones. Leave the family alone until we know more.
Believe that the guy I remember would do anything like this, but there's a lot people can change in 30 years.
Absolutely. So I think people are certainly reacting with, I'd like to learn more information, but if this is true, I'm open to that information and, take it very seriously, essentially. We also spoke with somebody who was in the same year as Rick in high school. We'll be calling her Amanda. She was able to fill us in on something that we verified through public records, which was that Rick Allen's grandfather was a man named Homer D. Allen, and he was actually the elementary school principal locally. In 1963, the Mitchell Tribune reported that he first went to work for the Miami Consolidated School District, which of course is north of Peru, and his role was basically the supervising principal for the elementary schools that pulled from towns like Mexico, Chile, Gilead, and Macy. And some background about Homer, who was, a public figure locally and relatively well known, as we understand it. He had degrees from Huron High School. He went to Anderson College, Ball State Teachers College, and he'd previously taught at Lakeland Community Schools in Syracuse, Indiana. He's since passed away, but it's interesting that there's sort of a family tie to somebody who would have been very much in, part of the community and a kind of an important member of the community. And what Amanda was able to tell us is that she does kind of remember people teasing Rick in school about that. Your grandpa's the principal. Not much of a sick burn, in my opinion, but just something, that she was able to remember slightly.
Tom, man, thank you so much, Freddie, for the $20. Hopefully, Murder Sheet wasn't given more false info from their source. Yeah, I have a theory on this, depending on how this plays out, especially if we find out that Kegan Kline had nothing to do with this. Then I kind of have a theory, and I'll share part of that. That maybe that episode that they released with him in the Jeep was them working with law enforcement and something that they did with the Christian Smart case. And we'll talk about that at the end of the episode. I want to jump ahead, but thank you so much for the $20, Tom. And yes, you came up with a decent theory. We'll talk about that after.
She described Mexico and the area around it as, it's not very big. It's just a little cornfield county type school. And here's what Amanda said about Rick himself. From what I remember, he was pretty quiet. We haven't really had any connection since graduating in 1991, which is a lifetime ago. But I do remember that he was quiet. But he was also one of those guys that if he told you something funny, it was like a zinger out of nowhere. A lot of my classmates, they're like, man, I don't even remember who you're talking about. And Amanda also remembered one particular detail about Rick that sort of stands out to her now. I watch bodies and stuff, just the thing I do. I didn't put it together until today, but he was one of those people who kind of walked closed. Does that make sense? How some people are like, oh my gosh, here I am, shoulders open and everything. I just remember Rick being a little hunched. A little bit like, I'm keeping to myself, nobody look at me.
Another thing I found interesting in our conversation with Amanda was that she told us about an encounter with Rick she had just a few years ago.
I lived in Peru in 2016 and 2017, probably about 4 or 5 blocks from the CVS. I remember going in there one day to get batteries or something. I talked to the cashier, good day, blah, blah. And there's a guy standing behind her with a clipboard, like how they do. He goes, hey, how you doing? And I look up and say, good. But I'm like, I know that voice. And then I looked at his name tag and I was like, oh my God, Ricky Allen. And he was like, I don't know who you are. It was very cordial, but I remembered what pulled me to his name tag was his voice. When he talked, it was slow, but not stupid, if that makes sense. There was no excitement with the way that he talked. So when he spoke to me that day and I was just looking down at my shit on the counter, I was like, that sounds really familiar.
That is interesting. Thank you so much, Cherry Sprinkle. I love that name. Supporting the channel and becoming a member. Thank you so much. You're so awesome. There's one other comment I wanted to touch on and I missed. Where'd it go? Sorry, I was going to touch on somebody's comment, but it skipped through now. But yeah, it is the way he talks. If that is him, like guys down the hill, that is kind of what they're kind of addressing.
We asked Amanda if she thought his voice sounded like the voice recorded on Libby's phone. She said that she did not want to speculate too much, but that it was close. And when she listened to it again with all of this in mind, it gave her chills.
We travel for what stays with us. Experiences are what people love most about travel. They create.
So let's take a
Okay, so they're about to talk about some of the theories about what led to Richard Allen and then what, because obviously these guys tend to get their hands on documents before everybody else. I would not be surprised if they've gotten a hold of the probable cause or some form of it, just by what they talk about. Other than them mentioning the whole Kegan Kline and him basically admitting to being there, they've always been right. They've never had anything that was, debunked that they put out. So, like I said, I have a theory that might have been something, just a ruse to rattle Richard Allen. But thank you so much, Jody and Newsom, for becoming a member. You're so awesome. Let me make sure I'm caught up. And then now they're going to talk about what some of the theories in the beginning of what led to Rick Allen and then what they believe.
Moment to jump back to our interview with Gabriella, one of Rick's former classmates at North Miami High School.
Yes, because Amanda there just took us up to 2016, 2017, and Gabrielle can tell us a little bit more.
He was interviewed after the murders happened. Police did interview him, and I got that through his wife telling mutual friends that happened. She played it off more like he was just part of the community and they were interviewing everybody in the community, and that's why he was interviewed right away. But I don't know if there was more than that.
Actually, the story that his wife told people wasn't quite true. Russ McQuaid of Channel 59 here in Indianapolis reported that actually Allen went to the police himself and identified himself as someone who was at the trails at roughly the time of the murders. So naturally, police at that time were interested in talking to him. For whatever reasons, maybe this is something we can discuss in the future, he got off the radar. And he wasn't really a target of the investigation, wasn't really a focus of the investigation for a while. And obviously, at some point, that changed. And there's been speculation about what it was that made that change.
Some people have said that Kathy Walker Allen, Rick's wife, tipped police off after she either found something or became suspicious. That's been one of the persistent rumors out there about how Rick Allen was arrested. And we can confirm that that's not the case.
But why don't we talk a little bit about Kathy Walker Allen before we continue?
So, unlike her husband, Rick Allen, Kathy Walker Allen actually attended Peru High School. So that kind of goes back to some of the intermingling that we discussed earlier between the two schools. We received from a tipster a photograph from the 1991 yearbook, and that was the year she graduated as well. She and Rick are the same age, and it depicts a young girl with very, very 80s perm hair, kind of the style of the time again. They were married when they were both 19, very young, but certainly a long-lasting marriage. And their marriage record reveals few items of interest, nothing really explosive, just that they're the same age. They're both from Indiana. They both graduated recently in 1991 and then were married shortly afterwards in November of that year. At the time, Kathy was an employee at the Wendy's in Logansport, so just kind of working, a retail job, a fast food job at that point. And at that point, Rick was working sales and delivery at Mr. Steve's RV. So you don't really get a lot of information. This is a young couple. They're getting married straight out of high school and going to make a life together. Not really seeing any red flags just from some of these documents or yearbook photos, but hopefully it can kind of go towards everyone's understanding of who are these people and what's going on.
And again, we can confirm that Kathy Walker Allen did not tip her husband into the Delphi murder investigation. Another rumor we heard.
No, I have not seen the yearbook pics. I haven't really looked for them because this was just released yesterday. I haven't really had time to look to see if there is any, but I'll have to look after the show and see.
Was that it was Rick Allen's brother who tipped him in.
And our understanding is that he does not have a brother, that the family consisted of his parents, him, and his sister. And so obviously there would be no brother to tip him in. And we've also heard that it could have been his daughter that he shared with Kathy, or another relative, or a family friend. And we can say now, nobody tipped him in. That's not how he came back on the radar. So we want to debunk all those rumors that are sort of swirling around here right now.
There was even a rumor, and this astonished us. My sister told us that she read on the internet that Anya and I tipped him in. And that's very flattering, but it's not true.
No one, this has been, we can confirm today exactly how, or at least more of an outline of how police came upon this man once again. Basically, Rick Allen came back on the radar after somebody connected to the Delphi investigation was going through old tips, came upon a tip, came upon some sort of file or documentation regarding Rick Allen, and basically looked at it and thought that it needed a second look.
and that second look was given, and that started the chain of events that ultimately led to the arrest of Rick Allen.
Yes, but the
No, I don't. I know that doesn't sound like exciting, but I mean that makes sense for them just to go back on old tips. I will not be surprised if that comes out in the probable cause affidavit to something like that. I know everybody thinks that, as you know, or a lot of people think that it's from Kegan Kline and the Wabash River search, and I certainly thought so, especially after this supposed confession and stuff. But um, looks like it just from what they say is that he was obviously put himself there that day, so they do have him, but as a witness. And then going through some old files, something stuck out to them, whatever it is, and they looked into it, and that's what led them to Rick Allen. So we'll play just a little bit more, and then there's a couple other things I want to touch on. Thanks you so much, Imperial Customs, for the $3 super sticker. You're awesome, fellow Utah. Shout out to you too, buddy.
actions of somebody affiliated with the investigation was the catalyst for this recent arrest. And it was not a tip. It was, as far as we know, not anything that anyone on the outside did. It was this sort of reviewing, and we know from knowing how the investigation works, and just from various public statements, and just, you know, what you could imagine is that there are so many tips to go through. There's so many different elements here that it behooves the investigators and those associated with the investigation to continuously look through and say, wait, what's this? Do we need to look at this again? You know, I mean, there was a whole 2019 whole New Direction press conference sort of that got to that.
And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a case of someone overlooking something, because there's always the possibility that something that didn't seem relevant in 2017, maybe you've gotten a new piece of information in 2018 that makes that information from 2017 seem more relevant. So it's always very crucial to go back and review case records. And that was being done here by someone affiliated with the investigation. Now, I'd like to jump back just for a second.
Okay, so I'll excuse me, I got something in my throat. So I just played about 20 minutes. That's about half the show. If you want to listen to the rest of it, check it out after the show. I think it's a very interesting episode. They, like I said, if you missed the first part, they kind of interviewed a couple of classmates and just kind of gave a brief description of what it was like with him growing up. There wasn't much that really stuck out. He was just kind of a quiet kid. There was one kid that played baseball and played Army and traded baseball cards with him. Said he was just kind of a quiet, average kid. And then there was one lady who's, I think, grew up with him and then also ran into him later in 2016. She said that he always tended to, which is interesting, is the way, I mean, I think when he's walking on this bridge, he's hunched over for multiple reasons. Obviously, because he's just making sure he doesn't fall through the gaps. But she does go on to say that he did have a walk like this, or a gait that was closed and that kind of hunched over. So that's kind of interesting. Very interesting episode for sure. Yeah, like I said, that's only half of it. But I definitely think, you know, with what they say about how he was caught, if it's true, I think it just old-fashioned police work, just going through old tips and leads and whatever documentation. They do talk about a specific document possibly that they looked into, and that's what put Richard back on the radar. So interesting. Thank you so much for the $20, buddy. So there are a few updates, and then I did want to discuss a couple things. So let me find updates. Go through them here real quick. So we did learn that in his adult life, he did work at several Walmart stores in Indiana, all throughout Indiana, up north, in the mid, and then down south. I think in down south as well. And then, of course, then he'd work at the CVS store, which is in Delphi. And this is a picture of the store itself, which had the sketch, of course, that he would be standing next to. Here is that same cat that was laying on his back. It's laying on his daughter's back, which she is wearing the Abby and Libby t-shirt there. Okay, so this is where there's my updates. So as far as updates with Richard, he has been transferred multiple times. Now I know I have it here. It says he's now at the IDOC, which is Indiana Department of Corrections. But from what I understand, in this latest document that I read, it says that he's at an undisclosed location. So they're trying to keep it a secret as where he's actually being held at. So we actually don't know if he's at Indiana or not. He is still looking for an attorney, as far as I know. He did put out a letter. We covered that the other day. He has a pretrial set for January 13th of next year, which I doubt will most likely get pushed back. I don't think we'll see anything until the end of next year, maybe 2024, unless something changes and he changes his mind. Then his trial is set for March 20th of next year, but same thing. I doubt those will stick. They'll most likely get pushed back. I hope we get more answers from the possible cause and not left with more questions. I'm sure. I think it's always going to be both. It always seems like no matter what's with this case, you get some answers, but more questions. It always seems to be the case with this Delphi case. Thank you so much for the $10, buddy. Kegan Kline, there's some new updates. Nothing major, but of course he had 5 charges dropped and others up to a dozen others amended due to a possible plea agreement and or cooperation. He does have his final pretrial set for December 22nd, which is the same, but his trial, which was set for January of next year, has been pushed forward and is now May 10th, which is crazy because that is my birth date. And it's wild because I think when they first had all his trials set up, before they did all these motions, I think he did have a May 10th date as well for this year, but got pushed back. So it's kind of interesting. Give us the motive. If this is random, it's going to upset me. Yeah, that's tough. Be interesting if he was working alone and he wasn't with Kegan. I would be super surprised. All right, let me get this one and then I'll show you the document. Thank you so much, Imperial Customs. Make sure to smash that like button. He says, thank you so much for the $2. You guys are awesome. So let me move this. This is just a quick little document here. Make sure you guys can see it. Where's the zoom on it? So this is in regards to Kegan Kline. So they talk about specific charges they drop, which I got to look into. So this is basically state of Indiana versus Kegan Kline. It says comes now the state of Indiana by Diedrich's prosecuting attorney and files a motion to dismiss counts and a motion to amend information on November 2nd of this year. And now the court being duly advised and the premises orders as follow. Number 1, on motion of the state, counts 4, so let me write this down, 4, 11, 15, 18, and 24 hereby are dismissed. So he had 30 charges against him. So these are the 5 that they are dropping. Write those down. And then the court schedules a hearing on the motion to amend information on December 22nd. So it looks like his final pretrials when they'll, I guess we'll learn about what they're going to amend. And that will be December 22nd at 10 a.m. And then, of course, like I said, his trial is not in January anymore. It is now May 10th. KK looks too lazy to pull anything off. I mean, that's the thing is, last night I was trying to, because I've always, I mean, just when Kegan Kline got introduced to us, always seems like he was going to be the guy that, would lead us to BG. And it'd just be such a shock that if there is no connection between the two. I think you're going to have to redefine the word coincidence. They're going to put the picture of Kegan Kline in there, along with dumb luck and many other terms. It'd just be so crazy that he's literally talking with these girls the day of the murder, or talking with Libby anyway. Lives nearby. I said it'd be so crazy if there's no connection. That's why I was a little surprised about what the murder sheet said, but it could be possible. Thank you so much, Freya, for the €17.99 super sticker. You're so awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Let's see where you guys are at. So, do you think Richard Allen? Because I always forget to close these. So I asked you guys, do you think Richard Allen committed other murders besides Delphi? 61% said yes. The next biggest would be 30%. So 60-30, yes, and not sure. And I think I will do, if it kind of slows down, I will do a video on Evansdale, because that is an interesting case, and as well as the Flora fires. I wish I could cover it a lot deeper, but there's just not a lot of information on Flora and or Evansdale. I mean, there's a little bit more in Evansdale, but with Flora, there's not much to talk about. It's just like, a fire in the middle of the night. I mean, it was arson. Four girls lost their lives. But just there's not much to talk about. No witnesses, nothing, so I feel terrible for the family. Okay, one of the things I did want to address, because I did do some experiments back in the day, and I just did want to talk about this real quick, is so here's because the video is just like 1 second, it's 48 frames. And I know people have studied this, YouTubers have gone over this a million times, and I hate to go over it again, but I just wanted to touch on one thing, because I did dress up as BG, trying to figure out what he may have been wearing. I did it like 3 or 4 times, wearing different things, like fanny packs and stuff. But I was always kind of set that this was a brown hoodie under the jacket, but now let me pull up this other one. I really think it's where'd it go? I really think it's a fanny pack, just by looking at some of these in the shadows, where it's got the square to it, and I could not recreate that with my the control test that I did. I would think if it was his jacket, a brown hoodie, I mean, you would have seen a little bit more extension of this brown, which you don't really see. And as you can see here, I know this is burgundy. I do have other pictures where I'm wearing a brown hoodie, but as you can see, it doesn't score off. I tried to recreate that, and I just could not get that same look. It's still possible, but the way it's squared up, I really think that it's more likely a fanny pack. And then this thing, somebody mentioned at the beginning of the channel, because I also tried to recreate this, and I tried, because there was witnesses that said somebody had seen this guy with the scarf over his face. Unless he just took off the scarf and then like stuffed it in his jacket, and then that's just kind of the loop of the scarf. That's the only thing I could think of. That, or it's somebody mentioned, because they took a Macy's bag, that could be a bag and it's just the handle. that would actually make sense, and I think that would actually line up pretty well. That's something that I would like to try. But that would not surprise me to have like some bag of maybe change of clothes or something. So, and then the other thing that I was talking with one of my mods, because she was kind of curious of where I think the gun was at, because I do think he had a gun that day, and I showed you guys this earlier, but and this is just my opinion, obviously, but I think he's about to brandish it. And the reason why there's only 1 second of this video is he's about to pull out the gun, and they didn't want that detail to be out in the public, because it wouldn't make sense for them to hide whatever video that they have of them. They could obviously just take the audio out of the girls talking and just play the video until he's out of the frame. But the fact that they just show the 1 second makes me really think that he had the gun just either in the pocket, or really I think it's actually just under the jacket, kind of like this where I have the gun, but it's just under the bottom, not in the pocket, but just kind of under. And as you can see here where you got the square, I really think, because I've gone back and forth thinking this is a fanny pack, and then like, no, that actually is a brown hoodie. But now looking at this again, I really do think this is more likely of some kind of fanny pack or deer kit or something like that. Let me check. Yeah, some things it's a mask. Yeah, the only thing is it's like if he had a mask, why wouldn't he just have it on? This is, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. It could be. I mean, like I said, it's all speculation when it comes to this, but let's see what you guys think. I think the brown pack he's carrying is a gun holster. My hubby has one just like it. Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, a lot of people sent me when I was trying to, because like I said, I did mini tests where I wore different accessories. And I'll show you one more. Oops, that is not it. There it is. So like I said, I did this multiple times trying different looks. This is where I wore the scarf around to see just what it looked like if I could try to. I had like a longer scarf, and I thought I'd have it around me and then see if I could have the loop sticking out, but it just didn't look right. And then here I had kind of a brown fanny pack, but the lighting wasn't the best. That's the other thing. It's just so hard to recreate the same thing, because there's just so many variables when it comes to this that it's really hard to reenact it. But yeah, the gun, definitely, it could be. Yeah, that's what I had been waiting to hear. I'm like, okay, so is he a guy that wore fanny packs back in the day? Then that would so make sense that it's a fanny pack. It was warmer for the time of season because, yeah, it was February 13th, so it was warmer. I'm not sure, maybe 40s. But yeah, it's warmer than it would usually be. But yeah, he's clearly got some extra layers on. So there's one more thing I wanted to show you guys before we end it here. Okay, if you guys missed my other show, I'll quickly recap what possibly might have been said, and at least on the bridge, and that is because the video is supposedly 43 seconds, and it starts out with Libby and the girls talking, which is confirmed in, I think, by Doug Carter. And then I believe BG says, "Hey, guys," but they took out "hey" and just left "guys." One of the girls responds, "Hmm." And then I believe Abby says, "Is that a gun?" He's got a gun. And then you hear the sound of a gun cock. and then he says something to the extent of down the hill, which I think down the hill is at the end of a phrase, and I really think because I think the original leaker said something about that in the audio that he expresses to the girls that they're trespassing, which if you don't know about the trail, it is kind of a dead end. So that's why I think, obviously, that's why they always suspected a local probably did it. Is get this to the right setting here. Is even though you could go, basically there's a gate or whatever right here. It says no trespassing on it, and so basically the girls were going to walk the bridge, and then once they got here, they were just going to walk the bridge back. So I think, obviously, if it was Richard Allen, who lives just 30 minutes away, 30-minute walk away, excuse me, only 5 minutes away, would have known that and would have had these girls trapped. I mean, it's just too bad they just didn't run onto the property, but it would make sense that if you told them that, hey, you guys are trespassing. True crime web, Steve. Other than 6'4", 6'3", thin and brilliant, you are a dead ringer for RA. Yeah. How long does it take to walk that 65 feet on that bridge? Okay. So I've seen a couple of videos. Here, let's time it. So he's at platform 6 when he catches up to the girls, or when the girls start recording. So we could count it, because she's going pretty fast. I think this is Julie Melvin, I believe. So we could count it. So I think BG's right, maybe middle or at the end of platform 6. When she starts filming, the girls would be standing here. So I guess we could count it. Unless she stops. Let's see. Okay, so it's at 7:10 right now. So I think that's about approximate spot of where BG's at. Doesn't seem like she's stopping. Just drop my pen. Okay, so let's stop it there. Oops. So 7:10 to 7:40, that's 30 seconds. That's going at her speed. And that looks like about the speed he was going, unless he kind of, I doubt he jogged that last little bit. I'm sure he just kept the same speed. So that would take approximately 30 seconds, maybe shorter or longer, depending on, but Julie is taking her sweet time. Yeah, I definitely think he was moving quicker for sure. So maybe 20 seconds. Could be less. But interesting, though. So, I mean, we know that it's 43 seconds. So clearly there's, a little bit more that's, he catches up to him. I definitely think there's kind of a short conversation about some trespassing. That would just make the most sense to me, is why they couldn't release any more audio from him and cut out the audio from the girls. And that's because if they heard somebody talking about trespassing, because they do say that releasing extra audio wouldn't help law enforcement. So I think that would translate to he's talking about trespassing or something that would make the public think that it's law enforcement, and that wouldn't help him. So, Elaine Bernard, keep up the awesome work. Member for 5 months. You're so awesome. Thank you so much. But anyway, and that's why the audio spliced, obviously, guys, down the hill. We'll play the voice comparison one more time, and then we'll get ready to end it here, because we've been going for a little bit. Video I'm going to do some new, and then I also Okay, so coming up here is the BG audio expanded, and then I took the word cables and guys, and I think that's the closest fit. Anyway, so there's that. But I think Richard Allen is bridge guy, and Tony Kline was waiting down the hill. Tony or Kegan? Tony? A lot of people think Tony, huh? Tony fits the profile of this type of offense. Yeah, I mean, he did have a bad past. I mean, not a good past anyway. I don't know. I think Richard Allen, I mean, it fits. He's right there. He lives right there. And if you look at just let's see. So here's my young guy sketch, but I age progressed it. Now I did put blue eyes. That's kind of cheating, but everything else is just age progression with the mustache. And if you look, I mean, it's pretty much pretty darn close. And then obviously this is with the hat, but I said all of this is just a crew cut with the mustache. And that's the only problem I think they had with the sketches. Is they should have age progressed the younger guy sketch. So anyway, just to recap, if you missed the first part of the show, we kind of watched a little bit of the murder sheet where they interviewed a couple of classmates. And we didn't get to learn a lot about Richard, but just that he was quiet and what else? And then he traded baseball cards. Didn't do. Let's see. No, he traded baseball cards and he played Army. And that's what it was. Keep wanting to say he played baseball. And then a lady said that she noticed that he typically walked with a gait that was kind of shrugged and hunched over, which is kind of unique because this is what we see here. So, and then the trial date for Kegan has been pushed back. His pretrial is still set for December 22nd, but his official trial is now pushed back to May 10th. And then I guess we'll learn more on December 22nd about Kegan. And then as far as Richard Allen, they have transferred him to an undisclosed location to keep him safe. So I'm not sure if he's at IDOC, which is Indiana Department of Corrections, or not. They want to keep him alive. So you're welcome. So yeah, before we go, I did finally get the new pet video ready to go. So we'll play that here for the outro. And I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to touch on, but we'll touch on it tomorrow. And that bugs me. And there was something I wanted to talk about. But anyway. So anyway, yeah, the link to that podcast that we played earlier is at the top if you want to finish it. Like I said, we only listened to about half of it. So there's still another 20 minutes left. So with that said, I love you guys. Once again, happy Veterans Day. Special thanks to all the veterans out there and for the sacrifice. You guys are amazing. So we'll see you guys. Have an amazing weekend. We'll probably go live tomorrow, if not Sunday. So thank you guys so much for the donations. You guys are amazing. And shout out to the mods. You guys do such amazing work.